to exemplars like Mozart or Picasso, well then, you're right. You'll only be like a fingernail of those types of creativity. But it is a vast ocean of possibility. So if you can connect to ideas or people, you are probably more creative than you know. So I'm going to say a series of things, and you fill in what comes next. H2? Very nice. Red, white, and? Timely. Some enchanted? Okay. 5, 10, 15? See? That was easy, and it's because you made connections. You figured out the patterns. You did not have to labor over the pattern of, oh, what would come after red and white? Would that be pink? No, you went with what came automatically to you with the associations you have. That's creative thinking. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computers, once said, well, maybe twice said, creativity is just connecting things. I guess he'd know. My daughter is in her early 30s. Since high school, she has worn mismatched socks. As long as they are the same texture and basic weight, so that her feet don't feel funny, the color's completely interchangeable. Wearing a purple sock and a red sock with blue stars on it is her way of telling the world, I am not interested in your silly rules. I am my own person. She does the same thing with her daughters now. I have to say, I've always been a sock matcher, and so I'm really working hard on lifting that up as a sign of creativity. Being creative is fun. It connects us. And when we are in the moment, it might even make us smile or cry or laugh out loud. So we're going to create something together. And because I'm on a very short leash today as far as being able to speak to you and be close to you, I'm going to opt for being close to you now. And all you're going to do is do what I do and keep doing that thing. It's going to be in chunks. Keep doing that thing until I come around and have you do a different thing. Okay? Some of you have done this exercise before with me or in some sort of creative class environment. But we're going to do it because it's super fun. And so the wind started to pick up, and then a few drops, and a few drops more, and then some good rain, and then some serious rain. And then the storm moved on, and so you were getting just the residuals of those things. And the last thing to hear was the sound of the wind, just moving along. What creative, connective people we have. Thank you for playing along.
It is our custom when we gather to light a flaming chalice. The chalice is a cup or vessel that symbolizes the gathered community. This flame represents the spark that each one of us brings and represents the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of our commitment to bring more compassion and justice to the world. Please join me in our chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of our life together. Each week, as we light the chalice to symbolize the gathered community, we also acknowledge that our church is built on holy ground, ground that was first cultivated and occupied by the Haudenosaunee and those known as the Neutrals. We honor them and the land as we plant and tend gardens, blaze and tend trails, cut and replace invasive species with native ones. We call that space the Ecology Center, a place to teach and to learn and to listen and to speak for the diversity of plants and wildlife. And we offer this libation as our giveaway, a symbol of our respect for and deep connection with the land. May we be good stewards of the land and courageously cultivate community with all living things.
So I want to cover some of the basics of shape-shifting. I know you're all really familiar with it, and you probably just did a little of that yesterday, but I want to cover a few of the basics. The shapeshifter archetype refers to a character that changes form or identity. We're probably most familiar with the ones that change form, but it can also be identity. This transformation can be physical, such as changing into an animal or some mythical creature, or it can be more abstract, such as a character who changes their allegiances or morals. So catalyst for change, symbol of the urge or the desire to transform. So like werewolves don't get a lot of warning, you know, they're uh-oh, here we go again. But some shape-shifting is more intentional. We can decide to be shapeshifters. So for some examples of some shapeshifters, if you still think that I am speaking in words that make zero sense, I bring to your attention the X-Men. Now I am an X-Men movie fan. I'm not a comic book fan. It doesn't mean I don't like them, I just don't have them. So in case there's a comic book person who's a purist here, this is the best I can do. So the character of Wolverine, he's the one with the big claws, and those claws can emerge when emotions run high. That's a pretty good metaphor for how sometimes we live our lives. Sometimes when our emotions are running high, our claws come out. In Wolverine's case, since he can't control it, occasionally he ends up hurting people he loves, not just the bad guys. More good metaphors for you to keep in your basket of metaphors. So it's quick to strike. It just, very little control. And then there's the blue girl. Her name is Mystique. And she can shapeshift into, I don't know if I've ever seen her do anything but humans, but she is not bound by sex or gender or anything. She can completely transform herself into someone else, including voice. Handy tool. So I have known many shapeshifters in my life. And you probably have as well. Probably not blue, probably not with spiky things that spring out of their hands. So the first one that I recognized as a shapeshifter was a friend from junior high. That's old-fashioned middle school for those of you who were middle school people and don't know what junior high was. We had been absolutely inseparable for 3 years. We were geeky, not in a good way, socially awkward, and very, very outwardly religious. You get the picture? I know, you can feel bad for us, it's okay. So something happened to my friend over the summer break between 9th and 10th grade, the big transition from junior high to high school. And when we came back, I didn't recognize her at first. I could barely see her as she was surrounded by the pretty popular people. They were laughing and pointedly looking at some undesirable, and then laughing some more. 10th grade. Yeah, that's how that feels. And when the crowd parted, I was amazed at the transformation that had happened. Her hair was cutely permed. She was wearing makeup and did it well. And she had a super cute outfit on, like so up to date. There was no geekiness, no awkwardness. She had transformed. She had graduated from being one of the misfits into one of the pretty popular people. So take a look at the front of your order of service. Wait, order of service, was I supposed to have it? There's not going to be a quiz, so, if you just, but I just want to draw your attention to the picture. So these characters on the cover are from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. And these are the players, the ones who are putting on a play to amuse King Theseus and Queen Hippolyta at their wedding. When I was in a production with a British director, he referred to these characters as the rude mechanicals. Now, I don't know if Shakespeare called them that or if that was just what the director called them, but it was a good fit. They had heavy costumes and clunky shoes and loud voices as a function to be opposite from the fairies, who are sort of the stars in A Midsummer Night's Dream. So if you've seen or read the play, you know that one of the rude mechanicals, named Bottom, is transformed, at least from the neck up, into a donkey. And Queen Titania, Queen of the Fairies, who has encountered some of Puck's fairy dust, falls madly in love with this donkey. And it was all a big plot, and really, it's one of the most fun Shakespearean plays. If you get a chance to see it, read it. We could read it together. That would be super fun. Everyone in the play, not just Bottom, but everyone is transformed. They're returned to themselves at the end, but they've all changed. Every single one has changed because of what happened to them, in them, with them. I believe that we all have the capacity to be shapeshifters. Maybe not in the cool ways that characters in plays and movies are, but in really important ways. You see, I think being aware of our own and others' shapeshifting leads us to empathy and creative thinking. So I'm going to see if we can make these slightly more concrete. This is where it all gets questionable, where I was going to descend into the place. So I'm going to have to be a one-woman show. So I have here a lollipop. That's what we called them. These were created by my friend Pam Moran when I was with Das Puppenspiel. Yep, that's a real name. You can laugh. It's okay. It's cute. It means the puppet play. I was a professional puppeteer and director with them, and Pam had made these to go into the BOCES system, and it was to help foster understanding and empathy. And so, you know, I could wear it like this, and I could embody, be shape-shifted, if you will, into this character. So, as this character, what do you think about what I'm feeling? Just shout it out, because I can't wander with the mic.
Thoughtful.
What's that?
Thoughtful.
Satisfied? And what was the first part of that? Content. There was another voice. Studious, kind. All right. Here comes your power. What did you say?
Grandma.
Oh, grandma? I've always perceived this as a boy. How interesting. I might be turning into this one. We're very similar. I just don't have my glasses on. So what do you think? Put out your empathy feelers. What do you think is going on now? I'm sorry, Bob. Ill? Distraught? Worried? What was that? Troubled? Fever? Is that what you said? Oh. Okay. Disappointed. All kinds of something's not right, right? So if you were going to walk up to this shapeshifter and you were used to seeing them in this way with their little smile and kind of studious and contentment, and you encountered this shapeshifter with looks of disappointment or troubled or any of the things you said, I would say, and this is just me, that maybe it would not be helpful to go, wow, you look really disappointed today. But letting the person that you're encountering name their own experience. Huh, is something up? You have a different demeanor today. Use the word demeanor. It'll throw them off their game. I'm just being bad. It's a good word, though. But observe. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to tell them what they're feeling, right? This is Communications 101 and all the other subjects you've ever studied, 101, even like math. Don't assume. Okay. I learned that in geometry just before I failed it. Okay. All right, here's another character. I won't go through all of these, but just to. So here's I don't know, she looks to be maybe middle-aged, presenting as female or at least femme, wearing dark-rimmed glasses, brown curly hair, little lipstick. What do you see? What do you observe? Strong.
She's ready for the day.
Ready for the day. Efficient. Confident. All right, I'm going to give her a little twirl. Disgusted, distraught, angry, scared. There's definitely a strong emotion happening here, right?
She's had enough.
She has had enough. So I have a whole festival of these. If you want to play with them after the service, I will fully support you coming up and playing empathy games, because that's what this shape-shifting is about finding that road to empathy and understanding, helping each other speak our truths. That can be some powerful, powerful shape-shifting. All right. Oh, I was just getting to the really good one, too. Well, now you're wondering what the really good one was, and you'll be up here. So my plan has been realized. So I want to give us just a little moment to kind of digest. I am going to need, and I'm not going to tell you what it's about, I'm going to need 2 volunteers, 2 people to trust me enough to say, sure, I'll come up there and join you on the platform, Reverend Michelle. Diane, I'll take you. And Kimmy, I'll take you. Excellent. So one of you will stand here, and one of you will stand here. This is a moyo, and it's a special tone drum. There are many variations on these kind of tone drums. This one is actually made out of a reclaimed, what are those things for the gas grill? The what? The propane tank, thank you. I'm like, what's the word? And the way it's been cut, again, afterwards, you can come up and check it out. But those of you up here can see that these are different shapes. And quite a few years ago now, our friend Phil Blumendahl labeled them with the notes that they are assigned to. So I'm going to just play a little, and then I'm going to give you each, and I want you to carry on the song.
Oh, boy.
So it's not creating a brand new song.
Okay.
So if I'm doing something quiet, don't be wailing on it. Looking at you, Kimmy. Okay. You can join me. And that's right. No previous instruction, on the spur of the moment. Very, very courageous, creative folks. Thank you. Thank you for playing along. And truly, come afterwards and play it. It's very sweet and kind of wonderful. So, we know that we are a beloved community, a gathering of people who have chosen freely to come together, to be together, and try to, create a different kind of space, a different kind of way of being in the world. And one of the ways that we do that is through our sacred agreements that we call covenants. It's very biblical, isn't it? Our covenants are these really strong promises. So our covenant, it took us a full year of meeting in small groups and test driving some and reading other people's and really figuring out what was it we wanted to bring out into the open and aspire to. So this is going to be a covenant recitation unlike any other, because we're being creative today. So you'll notice that if you're looking at the thing, that at the screens, there are slashes. So it's together slash. We promise, there's probably should be a slash there, but there was already a colon. Together slash, in compassionate slash, community. To celebrate slash, diversity slash, of thought slash, and unity slash, of spirit, another invisible slash there, and to seek slash, wholeness slash, for ourselves slash, our children slash, and our world. Why all the slashes, Reverend Michelle? First of all, do what I do. You recognize this? If you don't, we need to talk later, but we will rock you. Don't worry about it. So, we're going to do this together. We've not practiced it. This is fun. Here we go. Together, we promise to gather in compassionate community, to celebrate diversity of thought and unity of spirit, and to seek wholeness for ourselves, our children, and our world. And it fades like the rainstorm. There they go, bye. Okay, wasn't that fun? And now you are never, ever gonna be able to say our covenant without thinking. My work here is almost done. I'm feeling so good about this. All right. One of humanity's oldest forms of creativity is storytelling. Stories give us a way to connect ideas together and to learn something about our own lives. And I like to think of stories as enchantments. And I wonder if you're feeling enchanted. Reverend Michelle, what do you mean by enchanted? Oh, thank you. I was hoping you'd ask. So I looked it up, like I do, and to enchant means to influence by or as if by charms and incantation. Ooh, we might have done that. To attract and move deeply, to rouse to ecstatic admiration. And the example is, the scene enchanted her to the point of tears. So here's an example of enchantment from a well-known storyteller and Unitarian, Charles Dickens. He said, "Little Red Riding Hood was my first love. I felt that if I could have married Little Red Riding Hood, I should have known perfect bliss." Dickens obviously was enchanted by fairy tales. We are enchanted by fire-breathing dragons, princes, strange and wise paupers who are always at the edge of town. Do you notice that? And like Dickens, we are enchanted by brave little girls in red capes who undertake life-changing adventures. But what of the life of the spirit beyond the world of make-believe? Are we as enchanted with the dark and mysterious landscape of the soul? I've heard ministers and politicians and activists refer to growing our souls, inferring that we have souls and we need to feed them and nurture them. There have been theological debates over the millennia as to the question of who has a soul and who does not. The Christian theologian C.S. Lewis once said, "You don't have a soul. You are a soul." There we go. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. There is something there of transience and permanence, something that urges us to take a closer and deeper look at our essential selves. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. How can we be something that is so difficult to apprehend and define? First of all, let me tell you that when I say soul, I don't necessarily mean something supernatural. I could probably substitute the word personality, but I would have to somehow say that with glitter and lights, because it's bigger than personality, but somehow it's attached to that. When my daughter was young, she asked me about death, and how could it be that someone's body was still present, but they were so clearly gone? As I wished yet again for that manual for raising children, I, like any parent confronted with the completely impossible question, well, I winged it. My answer was that although the body remained, the spark which had made that person interesting and unique and alive was gone. Upon later reflection, I thought that was a pretty good answer without going all metaphysical on her as far as what the soul was. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. It's funny, we are able to tolerate a lot of change when it comes to a person's appearance. If I had come in here wearing a wig and maybe different glasses and just dressed not in my usual style, You might think that, well, there's something a little wrong with her, but you would recognize me. You would be able to tolerate all of that difference because you know me. Because we have bodies, but we are souls. You know my soul. So that reminds me of a story. Once upon a time, there was a frog who was really a prince. And that's all I have to say, right? Because you know how that story goes. You're already filling in the blanks about a prince under an evil spell that can only be broken by love's first kiss. So let's take the same story. This is about to break open the lid on all those movies that we bought for our children are the same story and over and over and over again. But it's true. Once upon a time, there was a beast who was really a prince. And once again, the spell could only be broken by love's first kiss and a demonstration of trust. So there is a pattern here. Once upon a time, there was a soul in a body that didn't fit their essential self. Human soul inside frog body. Doesn't fit. And only love had the power to break the bondage. Once upon a time, there was a soul born into the wrong body. And although this soul was born into a female body and given a female name, he knew that the deepest expression of himself was male. He struggled with his conflicting sense of identity. And finally, when he could no longer hold the tension of a body out of sync with his soul, he chose the path of self-love and courage and change. And it didn't take long for his family and friends to recognize the soul that they had always known and loved in his transformed body. And like the prince who could finally live as a prince and not a frog, he was able to stand tall and live divided no more. I'm not trying to intimate that we are living fairy tales. Rather, I'm pointing out that the universality of these stories about deep transformation and soul recognition. C.S. Lewis declared that fairy stories were spiritual explorations, revealing human life as seen or felt or divined from the inside. Ooh, divined, that's another sermon for another day. So they are spiritual explorations because they invite us to go into a deeper place in ourselves through a different threshold, a different doorway than we normally would. We learn to empathize with certain characters. And if there are villains, we feel that justice has been served when they get their comeuppance. And sometimes we hear universal truths about goodness and loyalty and self-sacrifice, deepening our values and our very humanity. I have a story to share that lifts up those universal truths. This is one of my favorite stories that my storytelling professor, best job in the world, shared with my class in seminary. I feel like I should probably have a little drip. I promptly went back to my room and wrote down as much as I could remember. And then, of course, it shape-shifted. So it's kind of the story that he shared with us. Once upon a time, there was an old Scotsman, Angus, and his wife, Mary. Angus and Mary lived in a cottage by the sea, and they had weathered many storms together, storms of all kinds, and they loved each other deeply, but to their sorrow, life had never given them children. One night, Angus was awakened from a sound sleep. There was a storm raging outside, And at first he thought it must have been the thunder, the howling wind that awakened him. And yet, in that part of Scotland by the sea, big storms with howling wind, that just meant it was a day that ended with a Y. It was nothing out of the ordinary. Something out of the ordinary had awakened him. And as he was ready to push that thought aside and go back into sleep, he heard it again. And Mary must have heard it this time, because she was up out of bed like a shot and ran to the window, peering out into the storm, trying to figure out what that sound was. And so Angus, seeing that this was clearly something important, pulled on his rain gear and he went out into that howling storm. And at first, all he could hear was the wind and the thunder and the crashing of the waves. But as he stilled himself and listened for that which did not belong, all of those other sounds belonged. What did not belong? And that was when he heard it. It was a thin, thin cry, like a baby's. And it was hard to follow the sound, but he followed sort of that intuitive place in your heart that where you know which way to go. And he approached the rocks. And there amidst the rocks was not a baby, but a seal pup. And its left flipper had this deep, deep gash in it. Angus very carefully and gently picked up the pup, held it within inside his rain jacket, and took it into the house. And he and Mary tended to the pup's wounds. It did not take long for that pup to take over the family. And it was like having a dog. The seal pup would watch Angus with those mysterious dark eyes, watch him as he'd work, and he'd lay in the shade of the apple tree as Mary would hang laundry. Became just an essential part of the family. And then one bright fall day, that little seal pup suddenly, it was like someone called his name. And he did the little waddle walk into the sea and disappeared. For weeks, Angus and Mary would stand out at the coastline just hoping to catch just a glimpse of the seal pup, to see if he'd grown up okay, if everything was going to be all right. Well, years passed, and Mary grew ill. And one night, as a storm raged outside, Angus was sitting by her bedside, and he was trying to just coax her to get a drink of water, but she was too weak even for that. And as he sat there, he heard this insistent pounding on the door. And he went out and first looked out the window, wondering who could be out there in this weather, out here in this remote place. And there was a young man standing there, just dripping with rain. So Angus opened the door, ushered him in. "Stranger, please come in out of the rain. Can I help you to warm up, dry off? Would you like something to eat?" And the young man just kept nodding. Yes, you can do those things. I would love that. And Angus was watching the stranger eat, and the stranger was watching Angus keep looking off to the side, to the closed door where Mary lay beyond. And finally, the young man said, "Is there something behind that door that needs your attention?" And Angus nearly broke into tears. And he said, "My wife, Mary, she is sick unto death." So the stranger said, "May I go into her?" And Angus didn't reply. I mean, what could this young man do? And, he just sort of gestured, "Go in, that's fine." But Angus followed the young man in, and he stood in the threshold of the door as the young man walked to the side of the bed and took Mary's hand in his own. And he knelt down and he held that hand, that aged hand, just so close, right to his cheek. And Angus, for a moment, thought that the room wavered. It seemed to shimmer. Something was wrong with his eyes. As Mary turned to him and opened her eyes and said, "Would you have some soup? I'm starving." Angus was delighted and, of course, brought her the soup, and as he's feeding it to her because she's still so weak, Angus turned to the young man and said, "I don't know what you just did, but I am so grateful and I am indebted to you for the rest of my days." The young man shook his head and, without saying a word, rolled up the sleeve on his left arm to reveal a long scar. And the young man said, "No, sir. It was I who was indebted to you. You took me in at my most vulnerable, and you cared for me. And now our debt is paid." And with not another word, he turned around and walked out the door back into the storm, never to be seen again. Maybe you are familiar with the stories of the British Isles, the Selkie stories of seals that are people, people who are seals, and that transformation takes place. These stories of souls that are able to manifest in either human or animal form. And although on the surface they might appear just as sweet enchantments, what a nice story, they are really invitations into a spiritual exploration. As we uncover the layers of meaning, we open ourselves to deeper understanding. Because enchantments aren't just stories for entertaining children. Enchantments are spiritual explorations that can make us whole. May we live whole, undivided lives. Please join me in our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise and bow to your spirit as we sing our closing blessing together. Travel light and travel easy, till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. May the road rise up to greet you as you leave your past behind. I will think about you gently, and I'll hold you in my mind. Now look at one another. Travel light and travel easy, till I see you once again. Travel light and travel easy, and remember I'm your friend. We have a calling in this world. We are called to honor diversity, to respect differences with dignity, and to challenge those who would forbid it. We are people of a wide path. Let us be wide in affection and go our way in peace.